Now we're ready to go ahead and install our timing cover. As you can see, I've already had this one completely cleaned out. Scraped all the gasket surface so it's spotless clean. Same with the surface on the block. This has to be clean and dry before we put our sealer on. And I like to use Permatex Ultra Black. It's a good silicone sealant. If you put it on correctly, evenly, and then not too thick, along with the gasket, this stuff will hold out for years. You'll never even have a leak. Also on your timing cover, make sure that you remove the old front main bearing seal, which is for the harmonic balancer, before you install this on there. It's really tough to get off, and it's easier to take off from the back side and punch it right out. So anyways, we're going to put some silicone sealant around the gasket area on the block, and a little bit on the timing cover around here too. Not too much, we're not going to goop it on too heavy. And install the gasket in between. That should be enough to hold it on. First thing I like to do is just go ahead and take a little clean cloth, just double check, make sure there's no oil on here. Especially down here where anything might drip down. And I just take the sealant right on my fingertip here and just gently dab it just to get some on the block. Then you can go back and smooth it out. Actually, I put it on a little heavy here, so I'll take some up, put it over here. You really don't need a lot on here, just enough to seal any little air gaps that may be between the gasket and the block. This stuff also puts up to the heat pretty well compared to some of the other silicones that are out there. Next we're going to install our gasket, which comes in our gasket set. If you buy a complete gasket set, it should come with just about everything you need except carburetor gasket normally. Just stick it right on there. Make sure all your bolt holes line up properly. Next we're going to do the same thing on our timing cover and put silicone all around the timing cover. Just enough to cover the gasket area. You don't really want to goop it on too thick. If you put too much, it'll actually squish out and go into your engine, and could actually go in your oil and through your oil pump and the whole system, which wouldn't be good for anything. So I've got a nice little coat on there. Now these have alignment pins built into the block, so you can just set this on perfectly straight. Line up everything for you. Got that set on there. Next we're going to start all our timing cover bolts. And what I normally do is I always clean these bolts, all the bolts that hold the engine together, before I put this thing back. That way it'll be ready for paint, and you can inspect the threads and make sure they're still in good shape before you put them back on that way also. So I usually like to just start all these by hand. Another good thing to remember is before you start this whole job, it's good to go around and look at all your bolt holes for all your accessory bolts, your oil pan bolt holes, and make sure none of them need rethreading before you start putting this back together. That way you'll save yourself some real headaches. So we're going to go ahead and finish and tighten up all these bolts here. Anytime you're fastening on a new part, it's always good to start in the middle and work your way out. Actually will help push the gasket out flat. You won't get any kinks in the gasket, and also you have even distribution of pressure on your gasket surface areas that way. You won't have a leak. That's what we're after. No leaks. Okay, I'm going to go around and double check each one. Make sure they're all tight. Alright, so that takes care of that. That's not going to leak. Next thing we're going to do is install the oil filter screw-on adapter, which is also the bypass valve that goes right back here on the block. We're going to go ahead and put that on next. Now the oil filter adapter is held on by these two bolts, and they are special bolts. You want to make sure you save these when you take your engine apart. They're very compact and very shallow, so that way they have lots of clearance when you spin on your oil filter. All you do is go ahead and set this in. There's two bolt holes to line up right inside here. I always use Loctite thread sealer on this thing because it's really important. You don't want this to fall off. You'll have a giant oil leak and lose all your oil pressure if this comes off. So we'll put a couple drops of sealant on there. This will keep it from vibrating out. Now these usually take a 7/16 size socket. Put it on. We're just going to screw these in. Get them both on, just kind of snug. Make sure it's seated down nice and flat. And since the head of these bolts is really shallow, you need to just hold down firmly on that socket and very square when you tighten it, or else you could round it off. These bolts can be kind of tricky. This is about, there you go.